the Middle podcast, the podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, slackers, and welcome back to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. I am your host, Jason Eck, and we are once again joined this week by Carlos Rivera, and we're going to talk about some of the sounds and the sights of our graduation year, 1991 and 1992. Carlos, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, man, thanks for having me back. It's good to be back, and looking forward to this.
Right on. So it's kind of unbelievable as we're sitting here in 2022 in June, 30 years ago, which seems unfathomable. 30 years ago, we graduated from high school, from Francis T. Maloney High School in Meriden, Connecticut. And I don't know about you, but part of the reason that I started the podcast was because it was hitting me like, holy shit. 30 years have gone by, and all of those experiences, because, we have kids, houses, wives, like a completely different life. So what are your thoughts here? You're sitting at middle age and kind of looking back on the past 30 years.
Well, first and foremost is that it goes by in a blink of an eye. It goes by really quick compared to like the 12 years of schooling that we all, that we both went through, which seemed to drag at different intervals. Adulthood, it's funny. I know from speaking for myself, we kind of sit there and want to rush into adulthood, not realizing, for the most part, because every child has different circumstances growing up, but for the most part, it's pretty rad to be a kid. And we try to grow up so quickly. And then once you hit that adulthood and everything changes, especially when you have kids, once you have kids, man, time just goes by really quick. My stepson is going to be a sophomore in high school at the end of this summer, and it's just he was a 1 year old when I first met his mom. So yeah, it's crazy. And then the other thing is we're getting older, man. I look in the mirror every day, and there's a little bit more gray, and a little bit more gray, and a little bit darker bags under the eyes, and a couple of different more aches and pains that I didn't have the day before, and it's definitely crazy, but at the same time, I think I'm kind of the same person in a lot of aspects that I was back when I was in high school. A lot of the musical tastes and just different tastes in general. I've kind of expanded in different areas too as I've grown up and matured, but I still am a kid at heart, as I think you are too.
Absolutely.
Judging from, especially from, I love last weekend's episode with the Star Wars.
Star Wars is, it's so ingrained in our DNA because, we're talking about the different generations and our kids and what they experience, and they're going to be talking like we are someday. And that's so fascinating. So I try to pay attention about, what's happening in their teen years and kind of as a juxtaposition with ours. Certainly such a different time, even what was allowable or understood. And we're not even talking necessarily in a socio-political way. Just life was different. And some of the things that we did are certainly a far cry from anything that I would expect our kids to do. But Carlos, you're talking about looking in the mirror every day. There's two things that I've observed with all this. One, I got my first gray hair in high school. So I was doomed. I got married at 29 years old. I wanted to be married before I ended my 20s, and I had gray hitting my temples. I'm like, are you serious? And the other thing is, because we're on screen so much, they got the blue light glasses, and I'm wearing them right now. They amplify the bags under your eyes. I'm like, how is this a good thing for middle-aged people? It's bad enough that these things are the progressives and, I have the trifocals, and it's just like,
Same
really?
Yep.
Well,
try it. The progressives without lines, man, which cost an arm and a leg.
they do.
But without them, I'd be. I don't even use contact lenses. I don't see as well with contacts. And then again, talk about accentuating the bags. If I'm not wearing glasses, it looks like I had a rough night out the night before, and it's more so it's all due to lack of sleep rather than anything. But I mean,
so nothing's changed.
Still, no, nothing's changed.
There's plenty of lack of sleep.
Yeah, it's crazy. But before, the lack of sleep was because we were out gallivanting till all hours of the night. I can't do that anymore. I mean, I could stay up late, but I have to be home unless I have a really, really, really good reason to be out. If I'm coming back from a show that's out of state or something like that. But that's very far and few in between. I'm with my job. I work second shift, so I don't usually go to bed till like 1:30 in the morning. But I'm home.
Yeah,
I'm home unwinding for an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's not like, and I still, I toss and turn at night and whatever. It just goes with the territory of being an adult.
Yeah, I can far too easily stay up all night, even now. Yeah, it's bad. So like, we took a trip, for every other year we'd go out, my wife's family and stuff, and just all nighters, like all the time. And I'm like, I'm in my 40s. Why is this still so easy? It's ridiculous. But when I think back to our days, one of the things that we did was we drove around. We were never getting into any trouble, everyone. We were perfect angels. And honestly, compared to some people that we know, we were good boys. But what we did was we listened to a lot of music. And, all of you who are listening, know that Carlos and I went and we did a dive into some of the things that we were listening to. But we'd also mentioned how some of our friends didn't necessarily share the same musical tastes as we did. So we're going to get into a little bit of that, of the stuff that was happening in our senior year. So between 91 and 92, there's a couple of things that obviously happened in those years. One of them, of course, is the explosion of grunge. But like I like to do on episodes, let's just take a look at the top 100 singles of each year. So 1991 and 1992. Except this time, Carlos is joining me, and it's such an interesting time when you figure out all the stuff that came as far as mainstream once that whole grunge thing hits. Because when you take a look at the list, there are some things that I will admit I listen to, but like a Gen Xer, I kind of listen to all music. So here are the Hot 100 singles of 1991. And even though I get tempted to go through the whole list, we're just going to go through the top 10. All right,
I got it pulled up here too, man.
So number one, which is, I will tell you, there was one rule for my wedding DJ. You do not play this song. I don't care if a guest requests it. This is a no-go. It is on the blacklist. And that is Bryan Adams with the Robin Hood, Kevin Costner, Alan Rickman, may he rest in peace vehicle. Everything I do it for you. Wasn't this cringy back then?
Yeah.
Right?
I could respect some Bryan Adams, not this one.
Not this one. 90s Bryan Adams, not so good.
No. Nope. Anything past what? Reckless? Was that the big album by him?
I think so.
Yeah. Anything other than that, really, this was probably the only other thing I really knew that he did.
Oh, so, brutal.
And I wasn't not a fan.
So number two, which I have to tell you, is a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
And I had this single. This is the legendary Color Me Bad with I Wanna Sex You Up. And for anyone who doesn't know, there's a dude who looked like Kenny G in that group.
Yep.
Steven Waters, I think. He's like a major music producer mogul who produces for a ton of artists and is like really well respected. But Color Me Bad was trying to capitalize on the whole boy band thing, and good grief, it's brutal, man. But it was catchy as shit back then.
Very catchy. The first job I ever had was at a clothing store over in Wallingford. Kiss 95.7 sponsored us, so this was on there all the time. And it is a guilty pleasure. I sit there and I make up my own like X-rated versions of it. Sure. Like singing. Oh yeah, it's just so easy. But it's a great like, it kind of rolls off the tongue pretty easily, So it's definitely not a bad song. I liked it. Better than the Bryan Adams.
Oh, sure. Brutal. So the next song is basically an earworm that was ubiquitous, but I can't say that I ever liked it necessarily, but at the same time, I never hated it. But the CNC Music Factory, Gonna Make You Sweat. Everybody calls it Everybody Dance Now. And I'm trying to remember the name of that ripped dude who kind of looked like Ice-T, who was their main guy. And it turns out the girl that's in it is a lip syncer like Milli Vanilli. It's just brutal.
This song, my favorite, not version, but there's an episode of The Simpsons where they go to the steel factory and Homer's trying to ungay Bart, and it's a gay steel mill, and at the end they're like, hey boys, say hi to the Simpsons. Hello. And all of a sudden this song comes out. It's like, everybody dance down to Homer's like, oh my God, is the whole world gone gay? And the foreman goes, we work hard and we play hard. And yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's a great episode.
The Simpsons have this just a unique way of fitting things into the pop culture. So then when you go ahead and you watch it 20 years later, it still just seems completely normal. It's just really interesting.
Yep. So it was actually an episode with John Waters as his character and reoccurring character on The Simpsons, which is
that's right. Great. That's right.
So
yeah, he's the guy who kind of kicked off Johnny Depp's movie career. I mean, Crybaby was the first one, I think, right? That's
I think so, yeah.
Let's see, Johnny Depp and Tracy Lords in John Waters' Crybaby.
Yep.
It was actually a fun flick. So next on the list, we have, I guess she's most well known for being a judge on American Idol at this point. Talk about a different career trajectory. But here we have Paula Abdul with Rush, Rush. Now, who's in that music video with her? Is that Keanu?
I don't even remember the song.
I'm not going to sing it.
Yeah, I wasn't a big Paula Abdul fan. I mean, I like Straight Up. That was catchy.
Oh, that's a good song.
And that was the one with the cat or whatever, but I don't remember this song. I'm sure I've heard it tons of times. Maybe not recently, but back then, but I just don't remember how it goes. So
so that was with Keanu Reeves. The chorus is basically Rush, Rush. But yeah, Keanu Reeves is in the music video.
Was that the post
Emilio?
Ted's? Or no, was that Keanu Reeves post Bill and Ted's? Or?
Yeah. Because let's see, 91. That would have been Bill and Ted's 2, right?
Yeah, it must have been.
Bogus Journey.
So, yeah.
All right, now tell me if you remember this one, because I don't remember.
I don't remember this one.
Timmy T. One More Try. Okay, nope. Next. Now this one.
this next one.
Now all I can remember, and okay, who am I gonna say loved this song? Do you remember?
Do we have that we had as a mutual friend?
Yes, and we've talked about him on this podcast.
Was it Kurt?
Kurt. Wasn't it Kurt? Yeah. I remember being in Italian class and really into this song. Kurt, I'm sorry if you hear this. I could have sworn it was you. And EMF and Unbelievable. But to me, and it's further down on the list at number 17, but I think of EMF and Jesus Jones right in that same category. Yep. Those are both really killer songs. And I think the Jesus Jones record, I think I might have heard it once or twice, other cuts. But
it's solid. It's a solid album. The EMF one, I don't remember very much else from it. But that was a big hit for a long, long time, man. That was on the charts. I remember, I don't know if it broke any records, but I just remember it was on for a long time. And they were saying for a one-hit wonder, like in this country, they were a one-hit wonder because they were from England, correct? I mean, they were from,
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember the single. I think Phil Cagno was really into that band too. I remember he had the single when you used to be able to buy singles.
Yeah.
That had the A side and the B side. But yeah, I think it was Kurt, and that's funny because I actually he texted me this past weekend, and yeah, I'll have to bring it up to him next time I talk to him.
Yeah, this song was released in the UK in 90, was on the charts, 32nd best-selling single of the UK, but it was still hitting the charts in the US in 91. So, I mean, that was that's pretty long time to be, pushing on one single. So good for EMF.
There's a couple of songs on this top on the list that were on the, if I can remember correctly, were on the list for a long time.
Well, I think this next one that's on there.
One.
And when we look at the different songs that we've already talked about and how many of them are somewhat disposable. I'm sure if you're a Bryan Adams fan, like that's one of your favorite songs in the catalog. CNC Music Factory is that song is almost, I don't know. It's not a, I mean, it's not a parody song, but it's almost become a parody of itself where it's also kind of eternal. But this next song is legitimately legendary and will always be part of, music consciousness, I think, particularly in the era of ballads. And that is Extreme with More Than Words. And I remember one of our buddies really being into that song, not one of the singers of our group, and that would be Aaron Hartman. I think Aaron loved this song. I think he loved the band in general.
So did we.
Yeah.
That album was great, man.
Oh, Pornography.
I still listen to it to this day, man. It's on I have a CD that I put in my car, but I also have it on my Spotify, playlist. That's a great album. Just top to bottom.
I'm forgetting the name of the previous one though, but like their debut record with like Mother, like they had some great stuff.
Yeah. And there were storytellers. It was kind of like the, like Queensryche in the storytelling concept out, the album just told a story.
It did.
And it was, the same with the album that came out after Pornography, which I didn't care for as much, but that was, so they had that formula of their albums were kind of, each song kind of ran into another telling a formalized story. So it's but yeah, that song was even parodied a couple of times. I remember, not one of my favorite movies by Mike Myers, but he parodied it in The Love Guru. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
I've never seen The Love Guru.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I saw it at the movies. I was pretty, and I think I was sober at that point in my life too. But I did laugh out loud at that part because it was it was well done.
So very quickly, the Jack Black, Jimmy Fallon version is absolutely amazing. Almost a shot for shot recreation. Amazing. But I was just listening to a podcast today that just savaged Mike Myers' new TV show, The Pentaveret.
Yeah.
And if you're a Mike Myers fan, you go into it knowing kind of what you're going to get. And you're still kind of hopeful that, I don't know, there's going to be something beyond the formula. But he has a formula. He sticks with it. And it's just, I've heard some really blah reviews about it. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
No.
Yeah. I think he's lost his, his charm. All right. So the next one, do you know this one?
Don't remember this one either.
High Five. I Like the Way, The Kissing Game. I have no clue what that is.
I don't even know if it's like a danceable song that we might have heard at the prom or something like that. But yeah, I don't remember it.
And do you remember number 9's Surface with The First Time?
Nope. I'm sure if I heard it, maybe I'd go like, oh yeah, but not off the top of my head. Doesn't sound like something I'd really listen to very frequently back then.
Now the next one is admittedly, even back then, a little bit of a guilty pleasure, and that's Amy Grant going through her pure pop phase, less Christian, more let's just make some money, with Baby Baby. I kind of love me some Amy Grant,
Yeah.
I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I'm not a big Peter Cetera fan, but that song with Amy Grant, I thought that was great. That was like one of the few things I really liked that he did.
Yeah, I think I remember this song. I'm not going to sing it, but I'm playing it in my head. And the Peter Cetera thing, yeah. My wedding song, my wife was the one who chose it, was "You're the Inspiration" by Chicago. So obviously, I like me some Peter Cetera.
Oh.
I know that you're not a Chicago fan, a big fan in general, any incarnation. I like the older Chicago better, but I do have like 80s Peter Cetera is a guilty pleasure. I go through my phases where like I bust out like that whole Chicago 10 album or whatever and go down in its entirety. And it's just a guilty pleasure, my man. It's I have several of those. It's that I might have been ashamed to admit those back then in my youth, but as an adult, full grown adult, I wear it like a badge of honor.
Hey man, I owned the single of "I Want to Sex You Up" by Color Me Bad. I got no shame here. It wasn't my wedding song, but that would have been a trip, man. Holy cow.
Yeah. Yep.
But just, skipping around a little bit, I'm just glancing at some of the names. Supergroup Damn Yankees.
Yep, that's a great song.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Jack Blades and Tommy Shaw in particular. Mariah Carey was still an up-and-coming artist at this time.
Yep. Madonna's on there.
Man, Amy Grant had another hit. Hey, Ralph Tresvant from New Edition. I vaguely remember that one. And then Lenny Kravitz. That's when he was first getting started too. That was a good tune.
That's a great album.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm still trying to figure out because Justin insists it wasn't him, but I don't think it was you either. I just remember Nicole and I went with someone else, and we saw Lenny Kravitz and Blind Melon at this little club.
Yeah, you saw him in New Britain at the Sports Palace. Indoor soccer. I did not go see that show. I remember you went and you told me about it, and that's a rad place to see them, man. That's a small place to have seen Blind Melon, and that was when the No Rain album.
It was.
Out, right?
It had just come out.
And who were they with?
Lenny Kravitz was the headliner.
Was playing there. I saw Lenny Kravitz at the Civic Center open up for Tom Petty.
Oh, I remember you went to that.
But that was after.
Yeah.
That was the because that was Are You Gonna Go My Way? Was that album before It Ain't Over Till It's Over? That album or after?
I don't remember.
But yes, I was not cool enough to see Lenny Kravitz in a small club like that. That must have been awesome.
It really was.
Blind Melon almost. That's one of those songs that after I made my list, I was like, oh, that's right. I used to listen to that song a lot, and I omitted that one. I mean, making the list was pretty difficult.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the top 10 Hot 100 singles of 1992. Now, I was expecting, I don't know, something different, a different mix, but instead, it's almost weirder to think of this top 10 for 1992. So, what's interesting is that the first song here, well, actually, let's go 10-1. We'll do the countdown here.
Right.
This is a song that just recently got stuck in my head so hard, and I don't know why. I don't know what precipitated it, but John Cicada, Just Another Day. I'm sorry, that's a good freaking song, man. It's just a good tune. It's so catchy.
It is catchy. It's kind of like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas when he's talking about it. It's like, let's just say he's talented and we'll keep it at that. Let's just say it's catchy and we'll keep it at that.
Fair enough.
Ray Liotta, rest in peace. One of the most quotable movies.
Oh my gosh!
All time.
You know what? I didn't even think about that. The number of times we watched that movie. Holy cow! Well, we'll talk about movies in a bit.
Yeah.
So number 9, a Color Me Bad song I don't remember. All for Love.
I unfortunately kind of remember it. It's in my head. Like I'm not gonna do you and the listeners a disservice and try to sing it, but it is kind of vaguely remember the tune in my head.
It's in there somewhere. Now the next song I know, I was almost surprised it was this low.
Yeah, it's surprising that it is this low.
And that is the Red Hot Chili Peppers with Under the Bridge. I mean, really, truly their breakthrough. Really a truly amazing, and I'm going to use that phrase that I'm taking from George Harrison. That's an evergreen song, man.
Yeah.
It's perfect. And one of the things that we talked about when you were on the show the first time, you have the tattoo, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, coming off of Mother's Milk, already being a fan, and then having this fully realized piece of work, top to bottom, really track to track. And it's just fully realized for Scanti at this point is just an amazing record in general. And I just remember listening to that constantly.
Yeah. And this was, if I remember correctly, was this the second single? Because the first one was Give It Away. Right?
It was Give It Away. Yeah.
Single. And then, this, and then I think another one that was a single was the Blood Sugar Magic, that song.
Oh, Suck My Kiss, right?
Suck My Kiss also, yeah. So they had they had 4 singles off of this, but that, it is low on this. It's 8, but, I mean, maybe at that point, the Chili Peppers still weren't, they were huge, but maybe they hadn't become as huge as the next couple of years. I mean, for us, I know for if I can, I remember correctly, man, like we wore this tape out in whoever's car we were in.
Oh,
I didn't
absolutely.
have my license yet. I didn't get my license till I was 18, but I remember listening to this album in your car, in Aaron's van, Skip's van, pretty much anyone who we hung out with that drove, this album was on our senior year.
Absolutely.
And it was just it's, for lack of a better word, it was ballady for the Chili Peppers. It was a slow song, but so complex, man, and so pretty. It was very pretty sounding. And I remember when I first started to play the guitar a couple of years after I got out of high school. This is a song I wanted to learn because I thought it was easy. No. And that was before I realized how complex John Frusciante's guitar playing actually is. I mean, the chords and stuff on this are not easy to play.
And he plays what? He plays a Mustang? Or he did then, right? Fender Mustang?
No, he might have played. Yeah, his main guitar is it's a Fender Strat. It's some sort of 60s Fender Strat. It might be a 64 or 65, something like that. But yeah, he has used Jaguars and all that, all those different types of guitars. But he's a Strat guy.
Well, he's really good. Next is En Vogue, My Lovin', You're Never Gonna Get It. Also, kind of a song that if it came on the radio, I didn't turn it off.
Yep.
I mean, I really didn't. They were one of the, not the first girl group, because obviously that would have been Diana Ross and the Supremes and stuff like that. But of that era where they were moving into, the hip hop. And I think, when I looked at the 91 list, TLC is on there, and TLC, no, they're on here. Actually, that's right. They're coming up in a minute. One of my all time favorite groups. I got to be honest. I love TLC. But next, it's talking about Strat guys.
Yeah.
But this is him playing acoustic in one of the just profoundly sad songs ever. Yep. And I don't even really want to spend too much time on it, because even now, if I go back and I think of that story, and this is Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven.
As a parent, man, you could only imagine the pain and heartache that would cause. And it just seems to happen to a lot of musicians, man. I think Nick Cave's son died similarly too, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's definitely heart-wrenching.
And this is in a way, it's a cousin, for lack of a better term, of All of My Love from Led Zeppelin and Robert Plant's loss of his child. But one of the things that is your blues-based band, right? Eric Clapton's a blues man, Led Zeppelin blues. That real personal pain does make for amazing music. And it's something that, emotes for us as the listener. But I don't know if there's ever catharsis from a situation like that. But I guess playing music is the closest you can get. And honestly, you just talked about Under the Bridge being a ballad from the Chili Peppers. But it's also very earnest, which isn't always like them too. And talking about a completely different kind of pain, but really from a really truly emotional place. Great art comes from it.
Yep.
And that's really the kickoff of that whole unplugged phenomenon in general. Really kind of stemmed from this one. I'm trying to remember what came before this, but that whole unplugged thing then, goes right off into the, the grunge era and all that. But such an appreciation. Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? I'm giving credit right now to Tesla and the 5-man acoustical band, because they did it. That song was on the top 100 list of 91. I noticed it was in like the top 30. Oh, Signs was on there,
and that's a cover.
It
is
a
cover song
of the 5-man electrical band.
Yep.
Oh, they're clever.
that Tesla
band, and there's just coils. They're probably like looking at this Elon Musk guy going, "Are you serious, man?" It's like, "Hey, man, you stole the guy's name. I'm sure you didn't give them any copyright."
Yeah, exactly.
So next, as I mentioned, one of my all-time favorites. I do love them terribly, and that is TLC, Baby, Baby, Baby. Not my favorite TLC song. That, of course, is Creep. And then, honestly, Unpretty. Freaking good jam, but that's like another 5 years away. Any thoughts on TLC?
Yeah, I appreciate them. Definitely appreciate them. Not something I listen to all the time, but definitely kind of ushering in where women kind of took a hold in hip hop.
Yeah,
and just kind of like started making a name for themselves and becoming strong in the genre. I mean, there's some really strong, prevalent women in the hip hop community, and some classic, Queen Latifah.
Well, MC Lyte was really like the first one who really kicked things off. But then, with TLC, you have the crooning and the singing and the choreographed moves, but then Lisa Left Eye Lopez would come out and just bust out a verse, and it's like, where'd that come from? Just a perfect compliment, which, we mentioned, on Vogue, they didn't really have that rap piece of it. So this is what separated them.
Plus, Lisa, she was the one that was married to Andre Rison, right?
That's right. She's the one who burned his house down.
So she wasn't playing, man.
Nope. No.
So she was gangster before all of this gangster rap started blowing up.
That's
I think
right.
Some of these groups kind of took a cue from her and said, "All right, we got to up the ante a little bit."
That's right. What do you do after you burn down someone's house? I don't know, but we're going to figure something out.
Yeah.
So far from gangster, as far as you can get, is former beauty queen who lost her crown because she posed nude, and that is Vanessa Williams, was saved the best for last. I think she rebounded quite nicely in her career.
Yeah, that's a great song. I mean, I'm not bashful to admit it. I like that song. It's pretty. I like that word, pretty. It's a pretty song, and it reminds me of being young.
Yeah.
It reminds me of high school, I mean, it definitely, it was, again, this isn't the radio. At this point, I wasn't listening to Kiss 95.7 or KC 101 on my own that often. This was at work, because of where I worked. But I mean, it was what was on the radio. And And at this time is when you would get like the rock songs, you know, and the R&B songs and the mix, you know, and because they were playing the top 20, top 30 songs of a given week, you know, and at the time there was just the early 90s were such a mix musically. That's why you ended up having like musical festivals that worked, like Lollapalooza and stuff like that, because people's minds were a lot more open to different types of music. And, you know, it helped that the radio stations were playing all this type of stuff. It wasn't like you were saying in a couple of past episodes, it wasn't just the rock music wasn't just relegated to the rock stations, because these bands were getting top hits. Absolutely. You know, so you kind of the other radio stations were kind of forced to play them, you know.
Well, it also comes to the fact that when you have a singular format, which is what happens so often now with corporate radio, you get the same song repeated so often.
Yep.
But if you were legitimately playing a top 40 in rotation, and then some things that were for hits in, you know, a month ago or whatever it is, you got such a variety that, you know, you weren't locked in one thing. It wasn't going to be like, okay, in about 40 minutes, I'm now going to hear the same song again. You got such a mix because you had all of this to choose from. But the other key thing is it was less corporate. So an actual DJ could just drop in a song that they dug.
Yep.
Or maybe a smaller record label said, hey, can you play this? Or they heard it somewhere else and they say, you know what? We have to get this song into our rotation. With or without the use of what is it, AOR guy or whatever. Yeah, it was refreshing. But I think that's why our movies, our musical tastes, they are so varied, because I think everyone, for the most part, had varied. I don't know anyone. Can you tell me a single person that you know? And I know there was like one or two, because there was a country station out of Springfield. But I don't know anyone who listened to a singular format like radio. I mean, my dad was like a classic rock station guy, right? And they very rarely played the new rock. It was all that older stuff. But beyond that, I think everyone was listening to this mixed format stuff, weren't they?
Yeah, because in the rock genre, 99, PLR was the classic rock, and CCC was the newer, heavier, metal, and they were the ones playing grunge and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What was the pirate radio show they used to have on Saturday nights?
Yeah.
CCC, remember that?
I do.
It was pirate radio, and I was just like, ooh. What I knew of pirate radio was pump up the volume, like that.
Yes.
Was, for me, that was what was pirate radio. And although CCC's pirate radio wasn't necessarily like that, they did later on in the evening play stuff that was punk and hardcore and whatnot. You know, so it wasn't at the beginning of the show or in the middle. It was kind of like towards the end, like closer to like the midnight hour. And I remember, I think I might have heard Life of Agony on there. They used to also play a lot of like local bands too, from around Connecticut, Massachusetts. Not bands that were mainstream, just, you know, local heavier bands.
What was 88.1? Was it 88.1 or 88.7? Was that out of Wesleyan?
88.7 is WNHU.
Okay.
That was University of New Haven.
So that's where I heard a lot of stuff.
Saturday nights, man. Yep. Saturday nights and I think Sundays. Yeah, Saturdays and Sundays. And that was, that was like the pump up the volume radio station.
That's where I first heard Polly Jean Harvey. That's where I first heard Letters to Cleo. That's where you could get a regular, I don't know how Dinosaur Jr. became mainstream, honestly, because so much of their stuff was on college radio anyway.
Yeah.
But let's finish this. These last three here. We'll get through these, and then we'll talk a little bit about some movies as well.
All right.
So we have number 3, Criss Cross, Mac Daddy, and Daddy Mac. Because
you want to jump.
They make you want to jump.
For me,
my
brother and I used to sing this. We did it at my wedding.
Did you?
Oh yeah, I'll have to show you the video.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, my brother requested the song, and when it I was sitting there mingling with guests, and this song came on, I immediately ran into the circle, and my brother and I did the whole thing. He did one of the guys' lyrics, I did the other one, and we nailed it.
That is awesome.
This was my brother's thing. Like, he was into them, and I thought it was catchy. But he was in elementary school at the time when this came out, and elementary school? No, he was already in middle school. And he had the single, or he had the cassette. So we used to play it all the time at home. So that song grew on me. Plus, it was on the radio all the time. It was, catchy as hell.
It's pretty fun, man. It is pretty fun. And the fact that they were so young was also kind of intriguing. Yeah. You just kind of like, look at, these are little kids, basically. I think they were what? 12 or 13, maybe?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. The oldest must have just been a teenager, 13. Yeah.
Yeah. So, somebody like your brother, these are his age, and they're on the radio. They're on MTV. Their clothes are on backwards. What a weird, cool thing. And number 2. This is also, whether it's for the right reasons, this is also an evergreen song because it is a permanent meme. This is a meme song before there was such a thing. My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hun. Sir Mix-a-Lot with Baby Got Back, which is also been in a Applebee's or whatever it is, baby back ribs, Chili's.
That's right.
I want my baby got back. Brutal. Yep.
And it stood the test of time because my wife is 12 years younger than me, and she's very familiar with Sir Mix-a-Lot and actually listens to songs by Sir Mix-a-Lot that I never listened to.
Wow, deep cuts on Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Well, not so much deep cuts, but just stuff that, like, I was done with Sir Mix-a-Lot after like 1 or 2 years in college, just because there was other stuff to listen to.
See, I just have to look now. I'm trying to remember. Okay, so
when he's sitting there like shouting out all the different parts of the USA, jump on it, or something like that. That's a Sir Mix-a-Lot song.
It is. And I got to give a shout out because I did forget about this, and I did like the song from the, in my opinion, legendary soundtrack to Judgment Night. Mudhoney and Sir Mix-a-Lot with Freak Mama.
Oh, Freak Mama, yeah. That's
legendary. Legend freaking dairy, man.
That is a good song. Good, I don't know good in what way, but I mean it's definitely it held its own on that album.
Between Sir Mix-a-Lot and Mudhoney, that actually explains both of them. I'm not sure how good or bad they are, but they're their own thing, so I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And then finally, number 1, which I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, is incredibly bittersweet for our graduating class and the one before us. Yeah. So we have Boys to Men, End of the Road. So, all right, those are the Hot 100 singles of 1991 and 1992. So we're going to take a quick detour into movies. Just because I think about the movies that we watched, and I'm sure none of them were amongst the top grossers. Because we watched some different movies. And particularly during those years, I think a couple of them were already a couple years old. But for 1991, this blows my mind. So it came out, it was 12 million at the box office or something like that. But this isn't in any particular order, by the way. It's just order of release. You know what? I'll sort it by box office. Okay, top. I did watch this movie often, so at a movie theater. So the top grossing film of 1991 is Terminator 2: Judgment Day.
Wow.
Which was huge and kicked off with Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses had the one of the biggest bands in the world at the time.
And I don't know what ever happened to Edward Furlong, but none of it was good. Well, you know what? John
Yes,
Waters.
he did.
John Waters
John
movie.
Waters. Yeah, it was in Pecker.
That's right.
Pecker, but he also did Detroit Rock City, man. I don't know if you've ever seen
Ah,
that.
that's right.
That's
he
a
did.
great movie. That's a great movie in the vein of like Dazed and Confused, that type of movie where it was just like, there was no like deep plot into it.
Right.
They were trying to get to a Kiss show, and all the things that they encountered into it. A buddy of mine, him, Bob Lenart, he sent me a clip on Memorial Day, and it was. Have you seen Detroit Rock City?
I haven't. No.
Oh, you got to watch it. All right. Well, there's a scene with like these disco guys, and it's a classic scene in the movie. So,
all right, I'll check it out.
Disco guys and that disco people hated Kiss fans, and this was before the "I Was Made for Loving You."
And they converted them all to Kiss fans, obviously.
Yes, and they converted them into Kiss fans. But it's a classic. You could probably pull that up on that scene on YouTube. It won't ruin the movie for you, but you'll get a kick out of it.
All right, I'll check it out. I'll check it.
But yeah, T2, man. T2, I saw that in Puerto Rico because that came out right before my grandmother died, my dad's mom. And I remember going to see it. I was down in Puerto Rico for about a week, after she passed away and she was buried there. I think I went with one of my cousins to go see that movie at a movie theater in the area that we lived in Puerto Rico before we moved here to Meriden. So called Rio Hondo, which is Deep River, the Deep River Mall. And I remember seeing it there. And that was, the You Could Be Mine was in that movie. And that video on MTV was pretty badass. It was all Terminator stuff.
It was. And, we talked about, Appetite and how those liner notes were considered, so taboo on Appetite. But one of the lines that was in there, which he thought was a throwaway line, was with your bitch slap rapping and your cocaine tongue, you get nothing done, which ends up being a significant part. That was a lyric that was held on. It's so weird that he put it in the liner notes and then it becomes a basis for that song. But yeah, that whole Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 thing was also massive, and we'll get back to that in just a second, I'm sure. But speaking of soundtracks, here we are with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and as I mentioned, Bryan Adams. Good God.
Yep. No, I didn't like that movie.
No. I enjoy Field of Dreams. I like Bull Durham enough, and I hear some people have said that Tin Cup is great. I haven't watched it because I'm not really a golf guy.
Yeah, neither have I.
But Kevin Costner in general, he just doesn't do it for me. Now, I'm a huge Western fan, but if you're going to tell me I can watch Tombstone with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, or Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner, my kid's name's Wyatt, so I mean, just whatever. But it's like, Kevin Costner, I don't want to watch that. He seems all likable, and everyone tells me Yellowstone is fan-freaking-tastic, but I don't know, man. That guy just doesn't do it for me. Neither does the soundtrack he chooses.
No.
The next one also has, I think, a big hit single. So I really enjoy this series and the characters. This is the Addams Family, and I believe that MC Hammer did a song on this with Thing, the hand.
Yep. And then the Thing would dance around with him, when he was doing the MC Hammer dance.
But I read an article at one time that said that Gomez and Morticia Addams have the healthiest marriage relationship in any media. And I found that fascinating because they're just always all over each other and trying to do the best for their kids. And it was an interesting article. So I buy that. Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. Now, if I remember correctly, and let me double check and see if I'm correct. Yes. So this is the last film appearance of a really well-known actor by the name of O.J. Simpson. Because O.J. Simpson was in all the Naked Gun movies, and wasn't it either later 91 or 92 with the Bronco chase?
No, that was 94.
Was it that late?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. It was in 94. It was in June of
Wow.
opening day World Cup, when the World Cup was in the United States.
Oh, interesting.
And it was also the Knicks were playing the Houston Rockets in the finals, and the Vancouver Canucks were also playing the New York Rangers in the Stanley Cup finals. So I had lots of sporting rooting interest that year, and I remember exactly where I was when that OJ thing happened. I know exactly where I was and who I was with.
Was that Patrick Ewing versus Olajuwon?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
one of the finals that the Knicks lost, yes.
Yeah.
And one of the Stanley Cup finals that the Vancouver Canucks lost too. The other one being in 2011 against the Boston Bruins. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that was 2.5 years after this movie came out. So this was was this the last Naked Gun movie?
I thought there was another one, but I thought he was done with all these. Was there another one here?
Is this the one where Leslie Nielsen goes up to the lady, he's like, "Nice beaver," and she's like, "Thanks, I just had it stuffed." When they're at the library, she's climbing up the library up the ladder to grab a book.
Oh, that might be.
I remember that was in one of the Naked Guns. I don't know.
Oh, it's just Leslie Nielsen was a freaking gem, and the fact that he started out as a very serious actor, just amazing. The career that he's had with all the Robert Zemeckis stuff. All right, so then just glancing through here, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, supposedly, from what I hear, the best of the movies. Star Trek Boring number 6. Backdraft, Sleeping with the Enemy. That was actually really good. And then here we have Silence of the Lambs, which is legendary. And I have to throw this out there because I mentioned it, was it 2 weeks ago? Hot Shots. Hot Shots. Oh, Charlie.
Charlie Sheen, yeah.
Oh, that guy. And now popping over into 1992. Nice. Okay. And the top grossing film is Batman Returns. So that was the Tim Burton Batman. Lethal Weapon 3. Wait a minute. Was Lethal Weapon 3? That was with Joe Pesci. Because now you had to get Joe Pesci in everything. So before Samuel L. Jackson, it was like Joe Pesci was the guy that you just had in everything.
Was that the first one that Joe Pesci was in?
I think so. I don't know.
As Leo Getz.
That's right.
Okay, yeah. His name is
I
Leo
don't know
Getz.
how you remember that stuff.
It's like, okay. Whatever Leo wants, Leo gets. Gets it? Okay. My dad loves Pesci and loved that character. My dad used to quote that movie a lot, the whole Pesci character.
That is amazing. I mean, he is infinitely quotable. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Bram Stoker's Dracula, Keanu Reeves, Gary Oldman. Winona Ryder in that one too? Winona Ryder.
She was,
Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. That's right. I haven't seen that in a minute.
That was a good one.
I watched that. I want to say, oh my gosh, what was that girl's name? Debbie something. I don't know. I think it was at that girl's house, Debbie Seitz or something like that. I just remember clearly watching and going, it's pretty good. Let's see. Patriot Games. And then Wayne's World.
That was the big one.
That was the big one. And that was the one. Oh, and White Men Can't Jump.
Yes. Yeah.
We watched White Men Can't Jump a lot.
There's a lot of, there's some stupid ones that we used to like a lot too. Like Encino Man came out. That was a stupid, funny movie. Um, well, Kevin Costner was big back then too, man. JFK came out then. Raising Cain. That is a very underrated movie.
John Lithgow.
That? Oh, such a great movie.
That set him up for his whole arc with Dexter. I mean, honestly, playing the just maniacal, kind of two characters.
Yeah, and I mean, it was just creepy. Wow, it's
just an interesting list, but Unforgiven, by the way, which was a masterpiece. Again, if you like westerns.
Yeah, but Wayne's World was, talk about not so much, not resurrecting a career or anything like that, but like, that movie brought Queen into it kind of brought back Queen into the like main spotlight again.
Oh, because,
it did. People who knew Queen and how good they were. Like they didn't have to be reminded of how good Queen were.
Yes.
But there are other people that that song Bohemian Rhapsody it's still in commercials and stuff to this day.
It's still in the top of the listing of Spotify. And I mentioned this early on one of the shows. I loved Queen. It was a band that was in, a rotation of stuff that I would listen to. Hey, we should do this song or whatever. And it wasn't until Wayne's World, everyone's like, hey, have you heard of this band Queen? They're really good. And it's like, seriously? Seriously, you're asking me if I ever heard of Queen, right? And then like
for over 25 years.
Seriously. And then like I think 2 years later, so and you'll probably remember immediately. And it's like it took Metallica to do Stone Cold Crazy for people to realize that Queen did really heavy music and was actually doing kind of like, even before Judas Priest was doing thrash, like really heavy guitars before anyone was doing it. And it's just like everyone was thinking of just the flamboyance and all that. They're a good freaking rock band.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it drove me nuts.
But that, and there was, that was when both Dana Carvey and Mike Myers were on Saturday Night Live, man. That's when Saturday Night Live was still funny.
It was. So, I mean, we were watching Saturday Night Live, and we could do a whole episode on Saturday Night Live, going straight through into the, Will Ferrell era, like, and then there were the guys that were the bridges between like the different eras, like the, Adam Sandler and like stuff like that. Yep. The David Spades and Farleys and all that. All right. Well, I just remember some of the movies that we watched that aren't on these lists because I didn't think they would be. Things that were in our regular rotation.
Tell me.
Heathers.
Yes. When did that come out? That came out like
89?
Though, did it come out that Heathers? Boy, Christian Slater, man. I watched so many movies of his when I was in high school. Gleaming the Cube.
Yeah.
Heathers, Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah, Heathers was 89. I want to say that Pump Up the Volume, gosh, we were in middle school and that came up, weren't we?
No, I think we're like sophomores, no?
I just remember being on a bus trip for something and someone convinced somehow the bus driver or whatever to go ahead and play. So, 1990,
1990.
Man.
So we were sophomores, sophomore or juniors, depending on when it came out.
Wow. Just because I just remember like Heretic by Soundgarden, like that was just amazing. And what's that song when you, was it Freedom of Speech?
That and also Henry Rollins doing Kick Out the Jams.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
The Descendants were on there. Welcome to the Wiener Schnitzel.
and you know what? Everyone wants to say that the greatest Leonard Cohen cover is Hallelujah. Yeah. But I got to tell you, man, everybody knows that Concrete Blonde and just how that also informs the ending scenes, I'll pump up the volume too.
What's that? With Sweet Jane?
Well, no. So when I'm forgetting her name from Concrete Blonde. So she's singing at the very lower register, very Leonard Cohen, right? And then at the end, she's just like, everybody know, and just kills it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like this big moment in the movie where, he's like now recording again and like he's, transmitting everywhere and the feds are showing up. Such a cool moment and such a cool song.
Trying that track listing. What's the Concrete Blonde? Everybody Knows?
Yeah.
That's the song.
Everybody knows the dice are loaded. Yeah. It's so good. It's a great soundtrack. Liquid Jesus. I forgot about them.
Yeah. And then Wave of Mutilation, by the Pixies, but the slowed down, like, kind of like a trippy version, like a dreamy version. Very slowed down.
Do you remember us trying to film a movie?
Yeah, we're up at the
cemetery with Wave of Mutilation.
Yeah, yep.
You know how easy that would have been with cell phone cameras, dude?
Yep, and we tried doing it with an actual handheld recorder. Boy, I didn't realize that the Bad Brains did that kick out the jams with Henry Rollins.
Yeah, dude.
It was the Bad Brains. Oh, what a great soundtrack.
It really is. So
yeah, all right, you said Heathers. What was the Pump Up the Volume we watched?
So here's a little one. Do you remember? So there's this guy recently, and he's only famous apparently for smacking another guy on stage.
That guy.
That guy. Do you remember his first movie?
Was it New Jack City or I thought it was?
I'm not talking about the guy who got slapped.
No, not Chris. Because I was going to say I'm gonna get you stuck. It was Will Smith's first movie.
And we watched it, and I kind of give kudos to him because this was coming off of Fresh Prince. He didn't go straight into starring roles. So he took this little small movie.
Was it not Landscape of the Body? What was the name where he was with the art dealer?
Nope,
that wasn't.
So I'll give you another hint. Balthazar Getty.
Oh, was he in the? It wasn't Lord of the Flies, was it?
No. And I'll give you one last clue. And let me get his name right. Dermot Mulrooney. And Will Smith was in a wheelchair. And we must have watched this movie countless times down in Skip's basement. Where the Day Takes You.
Oh!
Do you remember that?
Yeah, because that was it had the intro was don't watch that sound. Everybody look what's going around. That was the beginning of the. Yeah, I forgot that Will Smith was in that. I remember Balthazar Getty. Who else was in that?
Yeah, Dermot Mulrooney.
The main character. That was the main character.
Yeah,
kind of like the longer hair.
Yeah, he was kind of like the mentor to all the other homeless kids.
Yeah, Ricky Lake was in that too, wasn't she?
I think she was. Holy shit, you're right.
Was, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, Where the Day Takes You. Wow. Yeah, I remember seeing that, watching that a lot. Yep.
Now there's a movie
that's
right. It's just like he took a small bit role, got his feet wet in like the film process, which is so different than serial television, and little by little, next thing you know, box office, and then he blows it all. So again, we watched White Man Can't Jump. Now, a movie that I didn't really enjoy because I didn't watch the TV series.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Firewalk with Me.
Yes, I made the mistake of watching that movie without having watched the series at all. And pardon my French, as I watched it when I was a freshman in college in Philly with friends of mine there that were into the series. I was like, I just wasted my fucking money on this. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But after I watched the series, I mean, what a great movie. I mean, they could have done so much more with it being rated R. but it makes a lot more sense, obviously, after the. And I wish I was just because Skip watched Twin Peaks. He was into that, and I remember he watched it while I was home on Christmas break or something like that. When I went back to school, I went with some friends of mine, and I just felt like I wasted my money.
I felt the same way, but at least it was free because it was at his house.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't watched the series either. I would watch like an episode and be like, dude, I cannot get into this at all. Like, I just really can't enjoy it. So then there was one other movie, but I'm trying to remember if I had seen it with you or not. Because I kind of almost feel like we were late to the game. Reservoir Dogs.
I never saw that at the movies.
I didn't see it at the movies. I definitely saw it on video because I remember the first time I saw Tarantino in a movie theater, you weren't with us. It was me, Skip, Frank, and John.
What was it? Pulp Fiction?
We went and saw Pulp Fiction, yeah.
I saw Pulp Fiction. Yeah, I saw Pulp Fiction at the movie theater. But obviously I didn't go with you guys. But yeah, that was the first time I'd seen Tarantino. And then Reservoir Dogs, I think I saw on video on VHS with either you or Skip or someone, or it could have been John Amoroso.
Yeah.
But what was the other? I mean, there was another. Didn't Quentin Tarantino also do Glengarry Glen Ross?
No.
No.
Oh, but you know what we watched? Because he wrote it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, dude. Natural Born Killers.
Oh, Natural Born, yes.
He wrote that and Oliver Stone. Did we go to that together?
I think I saw it at the movie theater. I think I might have gone with you.
Oh, man.
But that was, speaking of, that is Rodney Dangerfield at his finest and creepiest, man.
So creepy.
That's just the best character in the whole movie is the stepdad. I mean, that's not funny, Rodney Dangerfield.
No, but they do the laugh track anyway. But, no matter how old I get, I can still always recall because, she somewhat gets forgotten as far as her ability as an actor, and that's Juliette Lewis.
Very talented.
But
talented musician, too.
Absolutely. She's a punk rocker, man. And I can just recall her embodying this teenage character who's been abused her whole life going, he's dying. And it's just that whole thing, that whole sequence is bonkers. Yep. And I know that Tarantino says he doesn't love Oliver Stone's interpretation of the script, but I don't know, man. It's pretty damn good. And the
whole thing with
killer soundtrack.
Oh, that's a great soundtrack. But then that scene that's supposed to kind of represent when they were tripping on mushrooms.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, man, but later on in life when I tripped on mushrooms, it wasn't like that.
That is not a movie I want to see on mushrooms.
No. But it was, but yeah, I remember it was oh, wow, man, it's one of those movies where, it's kind of like reenacting what a trip is like. Nah, I mean, I don't know how they can do that in a movie. They probably can a lot better now, but back then when that came out, it was definitely weird, a weird scene. But it's just a great movie. I mean, a really good movie.
And Robert Downey Jr.
Yes, that's right. He was the news reporter.
He was. Yeah. He was out of his mind at that point in time, literally.
Yeah, he was still. Partying it up pretty good.
And now he's Mr. Respectable. He's Iron Man. He's Sherlock Holmes and whatever else he wants to do. So good for him. Good for you, Robert Downey Jr. But you know what? Yep. A movie that I definitely know that we watched, and I'm not saying any of us particularly enjoyed it necessarily. I still don't know if I like it or not. Less Than Zero.
That movie's great.
That is dark, man. It
is dark,
but
I mean, he was living that life. That was his life.
Yeah, he really was.
That's what his life had become.
Yeah.
I mean, but that was such a, and they talk about a killer soundtrack.
Yes.
That's got a great soundtrack. That's got Slayer doing In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
It has Poison doing Rock and Roll All Night, produced by Rick Rubin. Poison and Rick Rubin. That is the most bonkers thing that exists out there. One of the stranger things. So I kind of wish they had done a whole record together. That would have been badass.
Yeah, I wonder how much acting he was actually doing in that movie, huh?
Yeah, and it's Jamie
who
Gertz,
else is in that? Jamie Gertz,
Andrew McCarthy,
and then James Spader was in that too. Man, he was the drug dealer that Julian was owed all that money to.
Yeah, and supposedly either on the set of Pretty in Pink or Less Than Zero, first day on set, Spader does a scene, and he turns to whoever he's talking about. He goes, "Yeah, I really got this teenage asshole thing down." And it's just like, yeah, dude, you really do.
He was a creepy dude back then. Didn't and speaking of the soundtrack, didn't the Bengals have a song on that?
Hazy Shade of Winter.
Winter, yep. It was that must have been right before the Bengals were breaking up, because was that when Susanna Hoff was already like
out the door, man?
Pretty much like a soloist.
Yep.
the only one in the Bengals that was allowed to sing.
Yeah, and I had no idea that the bass player Michelle from the Bengals was a founding member of the Runaways.
Oh wow!
I had no idea about that. Yeah, so she left the band. She didn't want to kind of do their thing.
Yep.
So she went and I guess she had another band in between. No idea though.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So she has some clout. She's got some street cred.
Absolutely. All right, so Carlos.
Yes.
We talked about the music and we talked about the top 40. Now, I put not really the challenge. I said, hey, what are your top 10 songs? So I'm just going to give you a little caveat about how I put my list together. I tried not to look at it from the perspective of 48-year-old me looking back and saying, oh, what came out in 1991? Oh, that's a good song.
Because that's kind of like, unfortunately, because of my the way my brain works, that I fell into a little bit of that. Maybe I fell into a lot of that. But when I looked at like the songs that I picked, every single one of them were heavy in my rotation, to the point of I could sit there and justify putting them on there. But then after I did them, I was like, oh, what about this one? I forgot about this one. I forgot about this one. Because there were so many, man,
Okay, so Carlos and I are going to go over our top 10 lists of songs as we recall them, our top 10 from that 1991, 1992, our senior year of high school, our rankings. So Carlos, what is your number 10 song for 1991, 1992?
My number 10 song, I don't know if this came out when we were in high school or our senior year. It might have come out, but I might not have bought the album till that summer. But I mean, I just listened to it nonstop for almost the whole year. And I had it on cassette. And that song is Mouth of War by Pantera. So I wrote an essay in one of my college classes about the song, because as you know, I went to an art school.
Yeah.
And I had a class called Modernism, and I did an essay on, I had to choose a piece of art and I had to do an essay on it. So I chose this song, and I don't remember what I got on it, but I just remember that song was so badass.
Absolutely.
That album is really badass. And I mean, we had been into Pantera before because of Cowboys from Hell.
Mm-hmm.
But that had come out like 2 years earlier, I think, or a year earlier. But yeah, that's my number 10.
So let me just say that's amazing, because I actually ended up bumping a song from Vulgar Display of Power, and that was This Love got bumped out of my top 10. because that vulgar display of power was taking that template from, Cowboys from Hell had some straight thrash and some metal, but that borderline that they were taking hardcore and thrash, but they gave it that southern groove. Like it just had such a groove and a swagger to that record. And then of course, just unbridled aggression and just the cover art. And I don't know if you remember, because we had friends who worked at Strawberries, right? And we would get all the promo stuff. And I had that poster. I actually had 3 of them. And it was just the fist.
Yeah, the fist to the face.
Oh.
Man. That's just a dirty album, man.
Oh, it is.
It's a dirty, I think that's by far my favorite album by them.
I think so. I would agree. So my number 10 is, in a way, a guy who I'm sure was an influence on Phil Anselmo. Low Self-Opinion by the Rollins Band.
Wow.
Because that was his first hit. Like Tearing was a hit for like, college radio kind of thing. But Low Self-Opinion, that was who is this guy? Oh, he's from Black Flag? I didn't know who this guy is. That was a huge song for him.
I have that tattoo on my arm, dude, and he didn't make my list. I mean, that song was on the End of Silence, that album. We wore that album out.
So good.
We wore that out. But that was also like that summer that we graduated, that we listened to that a lot, no?
Yeah. I mean, it came out in 91.
Yep.
This was the only song that had really made it, like I said, big, where it landed on a regular rotation. And just like you mentioned, coming off of Pump Up the Volume, right? Rollins as a solo act was now just coming into his own. But that music video, that song got radio play.
Yep.
Which is mind-blowing because he didn't get a lot of radio play. He did for Low Self-Opinion and Liar from the second album, the next album.
From Wait, yeah. Although Tearing, I mean, I like Tearing a lot. And and before this, he had a band called Henrietta Rollins and the Wife Beaters or something like that.
Of course he did.
Yes, and I remember I had the album. They had like 2 albums. They were produced by Ian MacKaye. And I think there was a cover of Earache My Eye on it. It's one of the best covers of that song I've ever heard. I know that like Soundgarden and a couple of other bands have done it, but giving it the full Henry Rollins Band type effect to it it just worked. But yeah, it's a great number 10, man.
So we'll alternate back and forth. So I'm going to go with my number 9 here.
All right.
Jump Around by House of Pain.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Even that whole record, which I didn't think I would ever, buy it. I'm a huge hip hop fan, but it was kind of like, this is before Eminem, coming off of, stupid, Vanilla Ice. The only other thing that you had was, Third Base. And then you had that one other group, I'm forgetting their name. But it's kind of like, okay, is this, what's the phrase that Lord Jamar uses? Guests in the House of Hip Hop. And this was just a straight up good rap song.
Yep.
And it was a party anthem. And the other, Jump, from that time period.
Yep. And it's funny. I always, for the longest time, I thought they were from Boston.
Yeah,
but
no.
They're not. They're from LA. I mean, that's I always thought that, because I don't know, Irish, Boston, you think Boston, Chicago, New York, but no, they had their roots from LA, Danny Boy and Everlast and all them. Yeah. I had a friend of mine in college in Philly who had that album on vinyl, man, and used to bust that out and play it. He had that, and he also had Mr. Bungle, the first Mr. Bungle album on vinyl too.
Oh, that's sick, dude.
Yeah, he was, he lived in Westchester County, so he came from money and was hip into vinyl before it became hip again.
Of course.
All right, so My number 9. You got to just bear with me for a second because I have a cat here that's misbehaving. Give me 1 second. I'm going to put him in the other room. So, my number 9 might surprise you a little bit, but I wouldn't think so because of how much I liked this band when I was in high school. So, my number 9 is What You Give by Tesla.
Oh, you loved that song. And I, in hindsight, love that song.
And I think that was their third album that wasn't like the acoustic one.
Yeah.
Because that was, what was I'm having a brain fart. What was the name of that album?
Oh my gosh.
Because I know the first single was Edison's Medicine.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the name of it. That's how much I like them. I can't even remember that album. Dude, it stinks getting old.
It does, man.
But it was one of those songs that was a longer Tesla song, kind of like Love Song when it's in its entirety with the intro and everything. It's like a 6-minute song. And What You Give in its entirety is like a 6.5, 7-minute song.
It is. Psychotic Supper?
Psychotic Supper.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So I remember the first time you had played it. So I was always kind of ambivalent about Tesla. But you're like, if nothing else, man, you got to listen to Tommy Skeoch on this. You know? So the guy is just so cool, right? And in the video, he flips his hair into the, what'd you give now, honey? You know? And it was just this juxtaposition with him and Jeff Keith. No, man, that's a good song. That's a really good song that I wouldn't have probably listened to very much if it wasn't for you.
Were you a bit? Yeah. Did you warm up to Tesla?
Now,
as the years went by. Now,
you know, I saw them.
I had seen them. They opened up for Motley Crue in the Dr. Feelgood tour when I saw them at Lake Compounds. I'd never heard of Tesla before, and granted, Motley Crue blew me away. But I went out the next day and I did not buy the Motley Crue album.
Interesting.
I bought that after. I bought the Tesla Mechanical Resonance album.
See, I saw Motley Crue with Warrants on Feel Good.
The Great Radio Controversy.
Great Radio Controversy.
Yeah,
I saw Tesla open for David Lee Roth. So it was David Lee Roth, Tesla, and Bullet Boys.
Bullet Boys.
And that was a hell of a show. It was a hell of a show. And they did. They won me over. Pure performance. They were just really, really good. Consummate performers. All right. So what is your number 8?
My number 8 is, where's my number 8? They Came to Boston by the Mighty Mighty Bosstones off of More Noise and Other Disturbances. I probably could have put that higher, but I still was listening. That album was good, but I still like Devil's Night Out a lot more.
Yeah.
Than that album. But that's a solid album. And everyone likes, Where Did You Go and Cowboy Coffee, but They Came to Boston was a song that I listened to all the time.
And you can't go to a ballpark or an arena. Well, I guess less so now, but certainly from the 90s and 2000s, Bosstones are played. The Dropkick Murphys are played, and that's one of the tunes that's played, man.
Yeah, the Dropkick. Oof. Yeah, that's so yes, they Came to Boston by the Mighty Mighty Bosstones.
Very nice. So my number 8 is almost a given, but knowing what we talked about the last time, we're not my favorite band, and in fact, I didn't like the rest of the album that accompanied this song. But this was the song that changed everything, and I can't deny it. Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana.
Yep.
And, us and the boys, we'd go out, and everyone wanted to listen to the whole album, and I would just be like, oh, Smells Like Teen Spirit's good. What is this? Polly's stupid. What is wrong? Why do you like this? This is not good, So I didn't dig Bleach initially. I didn't dig Nevermind. I only enjoyed them eventually either with the acoustic or in utero.
In utero, man.
But Smells Like Teen Spirit, I feel like I can't deny that as just being ubiquitous during that time period.
They played it during our pep rally.
They did. They played it at our prom.
Into the gym.
Yeah.
Yes, and at the prom. They were huge, man. I mean, it was, it's funny. You had people like Jamie and like Toby and whatnot that were in that whole like punk and hard, more so Toby with the hardcore and stuff. But, Nirvana wasn't anything really mind blowing to them because there was heavier, harder stuff. But that was just, I think it surprised everyone that something that brash and in your face was in the mainstream.
Absolutely.
And it was just on the radio everywhere.
Yep.
And then the video with the skinhead guy with the Bad Brain shirt and it's in the gymnasium. I mean, that's just crazy. And it's a great song.
It is. So I mean, it can't be denied, the kind of power. And one of the things I will say, and this is what, again, learning more about them as time went on, is just how much of a craftsman Cobain was as a singer, as a songwriter, and even as a guitar player. He had a wheelhouse and he stuck with it, but he did push himself, and he certainly did later on. And the fact that he pulls all that stuff off acoustically is just a testament to the fact that he wrote that way.
Yep.
So can't deny it. Okay, so now back to me for number 7. Again, I think this is indisputable. What's interesting is, though, we haven't had anything the same yet. So I'm wondering if this is on your list.
All right.
Scenario, A Tribe Called Quest.
Not on my list, but again, now that you say it, it's one of those songs that, one of those albums that even, I remember like people like Angela Perry and like they would sing that, everyone knew that song.
Everyone knew that song. Now the whole record, Low End Theory, is amazing.
Great.
Also had that poster right next to Vulgar Display of Power. But I mean, it's a classic tune, and the fact that like a bunch of hip hop heads end up covering it, almost 2 decades later is just a testament, I think, to just how good of a song it is. And plus it was Leaders of the New School and A Tribe Called Quest together on that.
Yep.
All right.
So my number 7, because like I said, I didn't put them in order, but I'm looking at them and I'm putting them in the order now. So this one is you ended up becoming huge fans of these guys. This album did not come out when we were in high school. It actually might have come out towards the end of 92. But since it was like 91 to 92, and then when it did come out, I got this album and another album on the same day, and the singer of one of the bands did a part in a song of this band. So my number 7, and there's a lot of songs off this album that I love, but this one is Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, dude.
And you, my friend, got to see, well, I know you went. I don't know if you guys got kicked out or whatnot, but didn't you go see them with Cypress Hill at the Sting?
Yes. So what's funny is that there was only a handful of times in my life. Well, I shouldn't say a handful of times. It was from approximately, gosh, I don't know what year. It was after I moved to Boston, but I was straight edge.
Yep. And
listened to a lot, punk and hardcore and all that stuff, and kind of a nice little scene up here in Boston. But I ended up going with some friends. They weren't my friends. They were my friends' friends, right? So I'm just going because I want to see good music. So it's Cypress Hill, Rage Against the Machine, 7 Year Bitch, and Funk Dubious at the Sting.
Funk Dubious.
I got through the first 3 bands, and Rage Dude, all I can tell you is that at that point, I don't remember having ever sweat more in my life. Like, it was so good. Like, it was such a good freaking show, and I'm having a blast. And then, crew that I was with, spark up a blunt at a Cypress Hill show, people.
Yep.
Next thing you know, they're my ride. I'm getting pulled on the arm. We got to go. Why we got to go? Cypress Hill is on. We got to go. Why do we got to go? Smoking a blunt. I'm like, in a minute, Be Real is going to be on stage smoking a blunt. And we're getting kicked out. And I'm straight edge. Me, party boy here, was a straight edge. Got kicked out of Cypress Hill because my homies were smoking pot. Now, that is some bullshit.
So you never got to see the Cypress Hill. Have you ever seen them since then? 'Cause I never saw Cypress Hill.
Never saw them. Absolutely brutal. I mean, I saw Rage a few times, so that's great, but still.
Never saw Rage. So killing that album is just that's a money album. I still bust that out, and it's just, to me, it's timeless. And I remember I used to drive my brother's soccer practice when me and Jake Wallach coached his indoor soccer team, and I used to hit my brother and I think my brother was, so in 92, he was in middle school, and Pete Mia's brother John was my brother's age, and they were on the same team. So I would pick John up and I would drive them to practice, and I'd blast this album, and like they didn't know what hit them.
You know, it's ridiculous to be the age that we are, and it's not killing in the name of, but so I have the playlist for the podcast, and I was playing it this past weekend because it was gorgeous outside, and I'm like grilling, and no, we were on the way to my kids' school, and sometimes they want to listen to music, sometimes they don't. And where my kids go to school is an interesting place. I could talk about that in another podcast, but here's their dad. So these are my two older ones. And I'm like, it was just another bomb track. Right. And they're just like, oh my gosh, what is happening right now? And Sucker's going to take it. It's just, I can't help it. It's in my blood, man. I'm inclined to stoop down and hand out some beat downs. All right. So you are up next with number 6. What do you have?
Number 6. So for my number 6, this is a band that I've listened to consistently since I got this album. Kurt Gannon was the one who gave me this album for my birthday. He bought it for me. It's a band from New York City. It is a hardcore band, and it is the band Sick of It All with the song Just Look Around.
Oh, dude.
From the album of the same namesake. Yeah, Kurt got that for me when I was home for Christmas break from college, and I got that cassette, and I was off and running with Sick of It All. And like I said, I saw them last summer at a small bar here in Wallingford, and they just still bring it, man. I mean, it's such a good album. It's such a good song. And actually, there's a remake. They did a remake album of all these songs from a couple of their albums. And I think there's a thing with KRS-One at the end of the remake. Yeah. So
some
edutainment.
Just Look Around
by Sick of It All is my number 6.
Yeah, I remember you putting that on because that was the time that we were talking about maybe actually trying to put together a punk band, and just that opening bass line. Oh, it's so good, man. It's so good. Oh, I love that song. All right, so my number 6. Boy, I went back and forth, because this is not my favorite of the ballads of this particular band at the time. But I had to just be honest, because I don't think there was a party that we went to, a car ride that we went on, a parking lot that we partied at, that we didn't play November Rain by Guns N' Roses.
Yep.
It was as big as you could get. Talk about bloated. Talk about just, I mean, it's beautifully crafted, beautifully performed, but my gosh, it's one of the most pretentious things ever. Yet at the same time, if it comes on, dun, dun, I'm like, yeah, that's a good song. Oh man, Slash is going to murder it on this guitar solo coming up next. And he doesn't have just one. No. Not in this song. No. He has 2 extended solos. And meanwhile, Izzy's just over there. But yeah, number 6, November Rain.
That's it. Yeah, I remember buying those albums at Strawberries during a ride. I was working down the street at the clothing store, and I remember I had a brand new pair of sneakers on. Remember those Adidas Gazelles?
Yeah.
I had bought those, and it was raining, and I was on my lunch break, but I knew I wanted to get the album. This is before I had a license and everything, and I was getting out of work at 9. That's when Strawberry closed. So I took some plastic bags, I wrapped them around my sneakers, and I had my umbrella, and I went and got the 2 albums.
So you know what's funny is that those were not the first 2. Man, were they the first 2? Those might have been my first CDs.
Oh, yeah?
And
I didn't have a CD player.
I just remember the packaging. Well, so my stepdad was an audiophile, Yep. So it was like, that was like, such a big deal. So I would get things that he's cycling out equipment, right? Oh, well, I'm upgrading to the new thing. Here, you can have this. And it'd be, oh, cool, CD player. And I think those were the first CDs that I ever bought. And then I ended up getting that ridiculous stereo in my stupid little Subaru, which was, the radio was more expensive than the car. And it sounded killer, and it had a tape deck, and it had a CD player. All right. So I'm going to go next with number 5. And my all-time favorite band. And what a weird little record. And this was the first single. And as someone who was about to graduate high school, Midlife Crisis by Faith No More. It was just the jam for me. Like, that was like, this is like nothing on the real thing. This is like nothing like that first Bungle record. This is just this, I don't know, what is it? It's amazing. And it got radio play, and I just love it, and I can't, I couldn't ever leave it off the list. Just, it's a perfect song.
It got radio play, it got video play on MTV. I remember we used to like mimic the Mike Patton's dancing on in the video.
Absolutely.
That's funny, man, because I knew we were gonna have maybe some common things, and this isn't dead on common, but my number 5 is my favorite song off that same album, which is A Small Victory.
Oh,
that song,
dude.
That's my number 5.
That's awesome.
I mean, we wore that album out. That was one of those. I think we both. I know I saw that tour. You saw them at UConn, right? Did you see them at UConn with the Mighty Mighty? I think they play with. No, they play with Helmet.
I never saw them on Angel Dust.
I saw, because I saw them.
You saw them with Helmet with Kurt.
My freshman year. No, that was my freshman year in college in Philly. I saw him at the Tower Theater in Philly. Kurt was the one who saw him at UConn then.
Oh, okay.
Because that's when his brother was going to school there. His brother was a freshman at UConn.
Okay. Because I hitched a ride to go see Metallica, Guns N' Roses, and Faith No More at Gillette. Well, it wasn't Gillette then. It was the old Schaefer Stadium, Foxborough Stadium. And my ride was Angela, Lynn, Lana, and some other, maybe...
Mike came in with you?
No. There were no dudes. It was just me and all the girls. And gosh, I'm trying to remember who else was with us. But anyway, Aaron, I think. They're not at all interested in Faith No More.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. We gotta go. We gotta go. We have to go now.
Because they were the opener, right? They were the opening act.
Completely missed them. It sucked.
Oh man.
So I never saw them on Angel Dust, but that's okay. After that, I ended up saying like a million times on King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime.
There you go.
But yeah, Small Victory. My oldest said this. So one time I have this playing in the car, and my daughter's kind of like, meh, so it's okay. And my oldest goes, I don't know, man. This song is a total vibe. This song is a vibe. And I'm like, you know what, man? I don't know if that means the same thing to your generation as us in my generation, but this song is a vibe, without a doubt. Small Victory is awesome.
It shouldn't bother me, but it does.
Oh, and I'm just going to give another kind of what do they call it? Honorable mention for Everything's Ruined, which was not released in the States as a single, but it was released in the UK as a single. And that song is so amazing and underrated and one of their best.
Yep.
All right. So that was number 5. So what do you got for number 4, sir?
All right. So my number 4 is a song that you had earlier. And I have it higher up on my list, though, because of it kind of opened. I never saw that. Like when I first heard this song, to me, it wasn't grunge. It wasn't like the rest, it's what grunge became and everything, but it smells like Teen Spirit.
Yeah. What was it?
Yeah, I don't know, man, because grunge to me is like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and, Alice in Chains. I don't know with Nirvana. I know they were in the Seattle scene, but it was, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. They were punker, more punk than the rest of the bands that we consider grunge.
Oh, absolutely.
Pearl Jam were like rock and roll,
mm-hmm.
more rock and roll. Soundgarden was like the reincarnation of, or not even reincarnation, but if you take like Black Sabbath, and they had, and then you had like the ultimate frontman in rock and roll frontman in Chris Cornell. Alice in Chains was just like, they were metal. To me, they were more metal than grunge, but not Metallica or Megadeth metal, but they were. I just kind of put them in the metal genre. I don't know why, but Nirvana was more punk to me than anything, and Smells Like Teen Spirit was like before Green Day and their Dookie album and their mainstream punk. This was like mainstream punk.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, and I know people have kind of used this analogy before, and I've heard it used before. It's what the Pixies didn't strive to be.
Yeah.
The Pixies could have been that.
Yeah.
If they really wanted. They didn't want that. And they kind of like they disbanded. And Nirvana kind of took some of what the Pixies did and just kind of like said, all right, this is what you've done. This is what it can become, and I think that's what Kurt Cobain had a hard time with. It didn't seem like he was the type of person that he didn't seem like he wanted to be a rock star, man. He looked very uncomfortable and all his demons and whatnot, but Smells Like Teen Spirit, man.
So, it's two things you said. One, it's anyone who gets into a band and wants to be in a band professionally, right, kind of wants fame. And then it turns out it's not all it's cracked up to be when it doesn't solve all your problems. So you become a millionaire and worldwide famous, and everyone reveres you and adores you, and you still feel like the same piece of shit from Aberdeen that you always were, and that's kind of like the tragic thing about Kurt, is that having a family and pets and a daughter just wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. And everyone struggles with these kind of things, but man, 27 years old, we could do a whole episode on Kurt. But it's also interesting. They were more of a punk rock band. They really were. in my opinion, there's really only two grunge bands. And they're the two bands that you mentioned that are metal bands. But I mean, there's Alice in Chains and there's Soundgarden. They're grunge. Whatever that mythical name means, I hear, I don't know, Outshined. That's grunge. Yep. You know? Man in the Box. That's grunge. Yep. And then Temple of the Dog stuff. That's grunge.
Yep.
Yep. Beyond that, got some metal. You got some punk. What's Mudhoney? Mudhoney's a punk band. You know? Yeah. I mean, that's really all there is to it. And there's other bands that came out of that Seattle scene, and then there's some awful bands that, yeah, we won't even get into. But, man, there's some, what do they call it? Second wave grunge. That's a little rough. Little rough.
Yep.
Okay, so number 4, a group that we already mentioned, but not because they were on the list. Number 4, here is something you can't understand. How I Could Just Kill a Man by Cypress Hill, which was not released as a single. I did not realize that, but let me tell you, wasn't that the song that we listened to the most? I think was I Could Just Kill a Man.
That was what whenever Joker's Wild would play at a senior graduation party. I remember when Scott Warnick had his party and Jake Gawlak, Don Horton, and them were playing. You know, Scott and Travis would always had to have them, you know, Pete Wilkinson do the beat, and Scott and Travis would go up there and rap, and inevitably they rapped this song amongst others.
Oh, it's so good though.
You know? Yeah, I mean, it's such a good song.
Be real. Album. Oh, that whole album is killer, man.
Yep.
So many lyrics that you can't really say, and was it Send Dog, and I mean just that whole album from start to finish. I wish so. I am a much different parent than I would have expected myself to be, where I do restrict content, and there's part of me sometimes just like, you want to hear a really great album? Oh, no, we're not going to do that just yet.
Yep. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, man. I mean, and it's funny, like I said, when I made this list, and these are, Cypress Hill I listen to all the time. I didn't put it on the list. It's just there's so many honorable mentions, or you could take one out and put that one in place, and you'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, there's just so many. But no Cypress Hill on mine, and that album and the two after that were in heavy rotation for me.
Yeah.
And, Black Sunday and what was the one after that? No, I can't remember. What was that album after Black Sunday?
Which is the one with Rock Superstar and Rap Superstar? Once I get Be Real's voice in my head, though, I can't stop.
Yeah.
Black Sunday and Temples of Boom.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, those are the 3 albums that and I have no Cypress Hill on my top 10 list. Woe is me.
Hey, man, it's all good. Headed up the river with a boat and no paddle, and I'm handing out beatdowns. Put me in chains, try to beat my brains. I had to get out, but the grudge remains. All right, so you're up next with number 4.
Number 4. Number 4 for me is it not? Did I do number 4?
Did I get it out of order? It's very possible.
Yeah, I think, yes.
Okay, so you're up with number 3.
Number 3. All right. So number 3, this is when I was actually in Ireland when I got this album. It had dropped in the U.S., but I was in Ireland for that summer.
I remember that.
I went away to Ireland, yes. So I remember having to borrow Bob Barber. Do you remember Bob Barber?
No.
Probably not. He graduated a year before us, but he was the one that went to Ireland with me. We went on the for the theater scholarship thing. But I digress. This is when the guitar player stopped using his iconic guitar and went to a new model, and it still was badass. and it was before the last album, before he cut his hair and grew a beard. He used a tool, and yes, I know you hate that. Or maybe it's not you. I know I have a friend that hates it.
I don't hate it.
My number three is the ever almighty Van Halen, Van Hagar with Pound Cake.
I knew it was Pound Cake.
Unlawful carnal knowledge. And that intro with the yep, and it just Eddie went from his iconic 5150 guitar with the Kramer hockey puck headstock to the short-lived Ernie Ball Music Man guitar, which was just badass.
It was.
And, that song, Van Halen was still is one of my favorite bands in high school, my senior year. And I was still really into them. And that album came out. And I had to borrow Bob Barber's Walkman because I didn't bring one with me. And I'd listen to it at night. It's funny because I bought this album and then I bought Frizzle Fry on, was it Frizzle Fry? Or Suck on This. I brought a Primus album on cassette at this small little record store in the town that we were staying at in Ireland.
That's cool though.
So, yeah. So Pound Cake by Van, and I know Don Horton, when the band played for the school at the auditorium, he did this with the drill, and I thought the power drill. I thought it was the coolest thing.
You kept trying to like sell me on the Van Hagar, and like I said, I've accepted 5150 30 years later, 35 years later. But you're like, oh come on, man, I love my baby's Pound Cake. Come on, it's so good. And I'm like, oh no, I don't know if it is, man. I mean, Sammy can sing, but I don't know. Well, completely different for my number three. But this was also played by Joker's Wild, which I, by the way, screwed it up for them. My bad, because I jumped in early. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yep.
Ugly Kid Joe, Everything About You. That is a badass song. I stand by it. I stand by that record. America's Most Hated. That is a fantastic record. They're a hell of a good band. And this song, that was a hell of a tune. A lot of fun and pushing the envelope about what you can play on the radio too. Yep,
probably should have been on my list. I saw them at Toad's Place when they toured on. I went with Kurt Gannon and Bob Lennart and Ed Diaz, I believe. And not on my list though. See, that's the thing. It's like those. If I had thought of them before some of these other songs, they probably would have been on the list.
That's why we do this, man. Because just whatever comes to your mind.
I mean, that is such a great album. Have you ever seen them in concert or no?
Never seen them. No.
No.
And I think I've said this before, but Busy Bee, everyone, if you hear this, listen to Busy Bee. It is a nuanced, and you use your word, it has some prettiness to it. Great vocals, killer guitar solo. They're not just the band that sings Everything About You. They do a lot of different stuff, a lot of different subject matter, and they're really solid.
Yep. I agree. All right, man. So we're getting down to the nitty gritty here, the top two, the final four here.
That's right. So my number two, I just realized got a fair amount of hip hop on this list.
I was going to say maybe we nailed it on. Maybe we finally hit one because I have a hip hop for my number two. So let's see if it's not the same song, maybe it's the same group, maybe not.
I was going to try to mimic the opening organ. Is there an organ in yours?
I don't know. Let's see.
So What You Want by the Beastie Boys.
There we go, my man.
That's it.
My number two. So what you want, number two.
That's awesome, man.
I knew we were going to hit one. If it wasn't I figured it was either going to be the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Beastie Boys, or Nirvana. One of those three groups, or I thought we were going to hit, but yes, that was actually like the two songs that are my top two I put down first.
Yeah.
Before and I
Me
kind of
too.
had to sit there. So yeah, so What You Want? That's such a great album.
I mean, it's so funny, like the evolution of the band. And I know, so I've mentioned a couple times in the show, Nicole, and Nicole was a big fan of, License to Ill. And, so was I. I mean, who wasn't? Particularly, middle school, whatever. But she liked the offbeat songs on License to Ill. She liked a song like Girls. It was just freaking weird. It's a xylophone and them, right? And loves Paul's Boutique. But I don't think they become the Beastie Boys until Check Your Head.
Yeah.
And then Ill Communication takes it even further. But I mean, this is that first record. You talk about they drop in. So we're talking about all this grunge stuff happening. And there is this kind of new swell of punk rock bubbling up under the surface. And here's a band that, you and I talked about this, came out of that punk scene. So they come in with the ringer tees and the sneakers and, the woolly hats and all that kind of stuff. They're coming out looking like grunge artists, and their sound has evolved into like real hip hop, like really dropping heavy beats. And it's just an amazing moment. I just think for them, they became legends with Check Your Head. Yeah.
And that the two songs off this album, I mean, this one was the one for me, but the other one was Pass the Mic. I mean, that was the one that we used to listen to. We listened to this whole album a lot. I remember skipping school, going up to Castle Craig, going to Ham and Acid, and listening to this album, going to Jafrita Park and listening to this album. This one and the Chili Peppers album. Like for me, they kind of go side by side. We listen to those a lot, like one after another, and I actually got to see the Beastie Boys on that tour under a fake name at a City Gardens in Trenton. They opened up for the Rollins Band.
Really?
And they went as it was the Rollins Band. We had gotten tickets. I said Rollins Band and special guest the Odd Numbers, which the Odd Numbers was what the Who used to go by. So like it's not the Who,
right?
So we're just like there was a punk band that was in a skate video that was like the Odd something. So I thought maybe it was them. I was like, oh, maybe it's them. I just thought the name was wrong. I was always calling them the wrong thing. And we got there, and City Gardens was in a real nasty part of Trenton, and we went, and they had a local band play, and then the place starts like really getting packed, and I was like, all right, well, Rollins is headlining, but he's not on for like another 2.5 hours, but the place is packed. So, and there's murmurs, oh, who's playing? And all of a sudden they came out, and it was just the most ridiculous thing, dude. It was the most that's kind of like you seeing at that Sports Palace, or seeing Rage at the Sting. That was my special concert, because Rollins, seeing him in a club was, par for the course.
Yeah.
Seeing him at a club like City Gardens, but not the Beastie Boys. I mean, even with that album, I know that they had to like kind of build themselves back up. But that album was huge. They're already huge, I mean, so What You Want?
So I went to pull up the record just because I was curious, and I remembered before I looked at the track listing. I was trying to think of the other song, The Biz versus the Nuge. But it says right here, the Beastie Boys toured with the Rollins Band in Cypress Hill in early '92 to support Check Your Head. That's a crazy tour.
Yep.
A crazy
Cypress Hill. See, I wish it was Cypress Hill.
Wow.
But yeah, Cypress Hill at that point was already, they were huge. I mean, and so were the Beastie Boys, but that's why it was just, they were in that, like, they were doing things their own way now. I mean, because that commercial failure of Paul's Boutique, they kind of had to had to start from like the ground up again because they didn't want to be the guys that were from License Still. They had grown up. They didn't want to do that anymore.
That's right.
You know, they just, so yeah. All right. So we nailed it. We both had the same number too. So
we did. So I'm just going to show you this before. Let's see. Can you see that?
Down a little bit. Bring it down a little bit. Look at that, man. Like, isn't that crazy? But it's not, if you think about it, because we hung out all the time back then, man. So of course we were listening to a lot of the same music.
So we just used Zoom to go ahead and show our list, to show our hand here. And why don't you take this? Number one
is Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And like I just said a couple of minutes ago, the two albums to me kind of go side by side because Rick Rubin produced the Chili Peppers album. Mm-hmm. Did Rubin produce Check Your Head? I know he produced License to Ill, but did he do Check Your Head?
No, so this was Check Your Head was produced by Mario Cataldo Jr.
All right, Mario G.
Mario C.
Mario C. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. It's just they probably came out around the same time, or close to around the same time.
Yeah. So Check Your Head dropped April 21st in '92, and let's see.
I think the Chili Peppers might have been before that. No.
September 24th, 1991.
Wow. So, yeah, almost, over a year. No, not over a year, but more than half a year apart.
Yeah, about 6 months.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because, you're right. They seem like they were just hand in hand, but part of it is probably when the singles were dropped at different points.
Plus the radio play, too. I mean, it was just like that. The Chili Peppers were on there for a long, long time. I mean, they were playing Under the Bridge on Kiss 95.7 and on all those stations that I had to listen to at work, so it was crossing over, man. Oh, that's it was crazy because in the mid 90s, like later on in the 90s, that wasn't happening as much. You had your like Radio 104s and this and that. You had your like platform-based radio stations, mm-hmm. and that kind of hurt. It kind of hurt the radio industry if you think about it, because I mean, not everyone was like, with some exceptions, but like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into that because now all these bands from like the mid 90s are popping in my head, and we can talk about that maybe some other time on another podcast, man, because music with both of us, man. I know this is a podcast on the music, movies, and culture of the Generation X, man, but like music is such a big part of it for us,
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And we talked a little bit about how there's so many parallels too, and how they informed each other. And I maintain to this day that, and this is maybe where kids aren't doing it, because I saw someone the other day post, do they even make soundtracks anymore for movies? Yeah, they do. It's still a significant part of filmmaking. And what a great way to expose someone to a lot of different music. And I'm so fortunate that I have kids who like music, because for 2 summers straight, like our road trip was the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack, which is such a mixture of all these different eras. Now, other than me, like, okay, when it's dad, it's boring when dad puts on Fox on the Run. You know what I mean? It's like, sweet, what are they? That's stupid, right? But if it's on a soundtrack to a really great movie, they're like, oh, The Runaways? Oh, The Sweet? Who's that? Oh, David Bowie? And it's a great way to do it. So movies and music, they go so hand in hand. And I'm looking at this right here. We're talking about the Chili Peppers. And of course, I just want to give a little movie shout out to, Anthony and Flea, who were both in Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze classic, Point Break.
Point Break.
So that's another thing. That was before Blood Sugar Sex Magic. That's right after Mother's Milk. And they're doing, parts in movies. But they became, I think, so synonymous with the time period and almost in a way anti-grunge. Because they're coming out of punk rock. They're coming out of funk. They're coming out with this completely different sound while still really heavy stuff that they have mixed in there, but that kind of nuanced stuff that they have as well. So I think it was a perfect juxtaposition of the time. Both of those bands, there's a bill that I wish would have happened. Yeah.
I could definitely. It's funny, man. You mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. I was just looking at the soundtrack. I guess it's not on the first movie, but there was a song that I put on Soul Town from Sirius XM in the car one day with my stepson Logan in the car.
Yeah.
And there was a song on there, and he's like, "Oh, I love this song." I'm like, how do you know this song? He's like, "It was on Guardians of the Galaxy." And now I just, it's not on the first one because it would have jumped out at me. It was like Mr.
Mr. Blue Sky by ELO.
No, not Mr. Blue. No, it was a soul and R&B song.
Redbone? Come Get Your Love?
It might have been that, but I thought it was something else. Because how many Guardians of the Galaxy movies are there?
There's 2 movies, 2 great soundtracks. They're both excellent. There's some really, really deep cuts on there, man.
Yeah, so it's but like you said, it's funny how, music transcends because that's a different generation that's listening to a song. I think it was that song that I'm thinking about came out in the 60s.
Right.
So it's and my stepson, who's going to be 15 this summer, said he loved that song, and it's funny. And I'll let you go pretty soon because, the 1 hour, keeping it to 1 hour, we knew that wasn't going to happen. But
I need a real producer.
We have a dog, and her name's Avery. So for probably like 5 or 6 years now, she's 8 years old, but for like 5 or 6 years, I've been singing. I sing to her. I'm like, "She's my Avery May." So I do like the whole like Warrant Cherry Pie. So last year, Logan's out with my father-in-law, his grandfather, and they went to a pool hall to play pool in Southington. So Logan gets dropped off by his grandfather. He's like, "I heard the Avery May song on the jukebox." I'm like, "What?" I was the song that you sing to Avery. I'm like, "You heard Cherry Pie by Warren?" He's like, "Yeah, it was on the jukebox." And there you go, man. I'm just kind of like making up my own lyrics to a song from our era, and my stepson, who's from a different generation, just comes about it. He probably, if he had heard it, he would have never mentioned it to me if I hadn't sung the song. If he hadn't heard me sing about our dog. So,
but the whole thing is, it's curious to me because then they find stuff out on their own, and then as we start to wind down here, we're driving in the car. I don't know, maybe 2 weekends ago, and I put something on, and it was getting vetoed, and people were bitching and moaning. And my daughter's like, "Can you put on my favorite song?" And I'm like, "What's your favorite song?" And she goes, "La Vie en Rose by Edith Piaf." I'm like, "What? What is your favorite song? Like, what year is that from?" It was written in 1945.
Wow.
Recorded June 22nd, 1950. It's like, yeah, this is like my favorite song. It's like the most beautiful, perfect song. So music is a beautiful thing, and the world needs to keep making it and creating it. And we'll keep taking a look at it, looking at the past, and we're going to do this again soon.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's just a couple of like honorable mentions that I definitely could have put on the list. I think like that. Neither one of us had No Rain on there, and that came out when we were seniors in high school.
Yeah, that's true.
There was no Rain. There was no Enter Sandman, which was surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, I had it listed as an honorable mention. That could have probably been in my top 5 somewhere if I was really honest about it after the fact. Like, but it didn't pop into my head. But that was there. A song like what was the other one? And actually, this might have come out in '90 because it came out. It was big when I was in Ireland, but or no, when I was "Wind of Change" by the Scorpions.
Oh my gosh,
another
yeah.
Song that was all over that, and there's just a lot of music at that. And there was other stuff that just didn't that was before our time. And same with movies, man. There was so many movies that came out. Like, granted, it was in the '80s, but like we used to watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High nonstop our senior year in high school.
Right.
I mean, it's just, and then just after that, '93 is when Dazed and Confused came out.
Oh,
so
yeah, we watched that a bunch.
That we were just like right in between, like from our senior year in high school to just when we were, out of high school, Clerks and stuff like that, man. I mean, it's just.
I don't know how I missed this. Dead Poets Society.
Oh, and did that come out in '90? That came out in like '89, though, didn't it?
Probably, but we watched that.
We watched the hell out of it. Yep.
Like all the time.
Poets Society. Yep.
That's
Poets Society.
Bearded Serious. That was '89, June 2nd, 1989. Yep. Bearded Serious, Robin Williams. And I think we also watched things like School Ties.
Yes.
That was what Brendan Fraser and stuff like
Fraser.
that.
School Ties, and then not music. This wasn't music, but it played a big part. At least I remember listening to this a lot, especially with like Aaron Hartman in his van before I had my license. Was the Jerky Boys.
Yes.
I think that first album came out when we were in high school.
Hello, this is Saul Rosenberg.
Yeah.
I'll bring my shoes and my glasses in case I need them. And we also listened to Definitely Not Safe for Work, NWA. We wore that out in Aaron's van, along with Two Live Crew.
Two Live Crew, yeah. He was a big Two Live Crew fan. Like that was his jam. Because he used to listen to that when we're like our freshman year in high school, sophomore year, when we're in track together. He used to, I mean, that was crazy.
Luther was his guy. And what's funny? We're also talking about like the honorable mentions. Neither one of us put an Alice in Chains song down.
No, and I was turned on to them when I went and saw Van Halen on this the Pound Cake tour, the Foreign Lawful Card of Knowledge. Alice in Chains opened up for them. Yeah,
and then
and pretty much
like one of our buddies. We were talking about in high school you had Injustice for All by Metallica, and you talked about the Black Album, but then there's someone like our buddy John who really loved Ride the Lightning.
Yeah,
even though it didn't come out in the time period, if I actually would have just put stuff we listened to regardless of time period in high school, there'd be songs like Sanitarium, constantly. 9 Inch Nails.
9 Inch Nails, yep.
I mean,
John was that Petty Hate Machine album. He was the first person I knew that really was into that album. Like I didn't get into that album until the Downward Spiral.
Yeah.
Was that then I went back and listened. I'd heard had a hole, but I didn't know the rest of the album until after. And John was into them. He was definitely into them at it early. Before me, that's definitely for sure.
I could do a whole episode just on 9 Inch Nails, and I would have to put the parental advisory little button on the podcast before I uploaded it. So that will be for another time and another day. All right, man.
No James Addiction on there. There was Ritual de la Habitual before. That was 90, wasn't it?
That was 90. I
had the original cassette with the pre-censor before the censored cover.
Yeah.
So,
and that was Was that 3 Days? Was that the closing track on that?
3 Days was on there, yep.
Oh man,
3 Days. Yep.
That was one of those songs too, where certain experiences and such that we may or may not have indulged in. That song was that's a trippy tune. That's a really trippy tune. And this is deviating a little bit from the path, but so my wife's favorite band is touring with them this fall.
Who the heck? I just saw the
Smashing Pumpkins and Jane's Addiction.
Pumpkins, yeah.
So I'm thinking that for her birthday, she's already heard this, so it won't be a surprise. Like, your birthday's in October, and want to go see Smashing Pumpkins and Jane's Addiction? And she's like, yeah.
The Smashing Pumpkins, I've seen this iteration of it, which is they're all original except the RC's not playing bass. But I saw them in Boston 4 years ago, and they brought the goods, dude. I mean, they played for 3 hours.
Wow.
3 hours. And they played everything that everyone wanted to hear. The songs from Gish, the songs from Siamese Dream, the songs from Melancholy.
Double album.
They played it. I mean, they played everything. And I had seen them before that with the only Billy Corrigan and Jimmy Chamberlain.
Yeah.
They were the only two original. They had they did a good job. They had a bass player that looked like the Artsy, but was not the Artsy. And they also had a guitar player that looked like James Iha, and it was not James Iha. But this band that this incarnation you're going to go see is solid, dude. I mean, so she'll definitely enjoy it, and and then you get to see Jane's Addiction. I don't know. Is it all original? Is the bass player for
Eric,
Jane's
right?
Addiction?
He never likes to be there. I'm not sure what the lineup is. I'll check that out. But yeah, it's just they are still coming back, and the reason that I think that podcasts like this, have whatever listenership they do is because these kind of things are. We had such a fortunate time for the arts in general, and now I wasn't a regular theater goer, but we could talk, late 80s, 90s, 2000s about Broadway. You know what I mean? And basically pick an art form. And there was a lot of really cool and interesting things happening. And we are so very fortunate to have experienced it because, and this isn't a generation to generation thing in a negative way. It's just that you can literally create amazing pieces of artwork that can look like any medium on your iPad. You can create entire albums from your iPad, from a computer. It's just very different. And we were very blessed in all these things that we can look back at it and say, these are the songs that we grew up with. And then our kids go, yeah, this is really good.
Yep.
Okay, Slackers. So I hope you enjoyed that little walk down memory lane and some of the things happening in 1991 and 1992 as Carlos and I celebrate our 30th year away from high school. No idea if we're having a reunion this year. Chances are we're not. I think many of you have similar situations where sometimes you have a reunion, sometimes you don't. Some classes are closer than others. But if anyone out there is part of our class and there's something going on this summer, hey, please shoot me an email, which, perfect timing, you can email me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at StuckPodX. You can also follow me on Facebook at Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast. Leave 5-star reviews, like, and subscribe to the podcast. And as always, until next time, later, Slackers.